Hello, it's Mattowarrior with Mattowarrior's Metal Madness, the second episode. And you could see probably in the near future I'll have some interviews and guests and so forth. So I think it's time for the news. So let's see what's in the news today for the metal world here, or whatever. So I'm going straight to Blabbermouth. I actually saw a headline today that I wanted to talk about in depth. Thought it was pretty hilarious. So let's see, the first page. Dream Theater kicks off Top of the World 2022 North America Tour in Mesa. Okay, yeah. I've seen him like 4 or 5 times. I probably won't see him again, honestly. I do like him. I haven't liked him as much since Portnoy left, honestly, though. I don't know, he had this like, he probably just said no to a lot of the ideas. Like, well, the Astonishing was just like Styx's Kilroy was here, but worse. And I like Styx, and I like some of the songs off that too, but documentary about Deadly Great White Concert Fire to premiere on Reels later this month. It might be interesting to watch. I don't know. About some over the hill hard rock band that were so full of themselves they brought pyro to like a small club gig. I don't know. Whatever. I saw Great White live actually back in the day. Tesla opened, and Badlands were supposed to appear, but they never showed up. So Tesla got to play longer, and they just completely obliterated Great White's show. It was actually really good because Tesla were so good. I just bought like 3 of their albums more recently because I think I was missing out for years on that. This was back in the day. I'm pretty old, so I was a kid though, so whatever. Ex-Judas Priest KK Downing is over the moon about being nominated for Rock Hall the 3rd time. Well, hopefully they'll pick him next time. I think the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a pile of shit. I think if my band or, I think that Sex Pistols, them slagging off the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when they were nominated was great. And I think, I'd probably pull some if I ever got nominated, which, yeah, that'll never happen. But if I ever did, I'd probably shit on stage or something and throw it at I don't know, like pull a full G.G. Allen on those people. All That Remains frontman calls Spotify CEO a dick, says streaming giant doesn't pay artists well. So I'm put in the middle of this Joe Rogan thing recently, and I don't really want to talk about it on this podcast, but I'll say that in this case, in this situation, I think I agree with him about that part of it. So I'm going to skip this headline because I'm going to talk more in depth about this one. It's just very recent headline. I think is hilarious. Okay, so Scott Gorham, I'm on Blabbermouth, of course. Scott Gorham explains decision to leave Black Star Riders. I don't really care. I love Thin Lizzy. I don't know. Whatever. Some of these bands. Hammerfall guitarist explains how King Diamond's guest appearance on Venerate Me came about. Oh, that's cool that he was on a Hammerfall album. Judas Priest, Rob Halford in cancer battle. I'm still in remission. Okay, well, I hope he does well. Former Wasp guitarist Chris Holmes diagnosed with throat and neck cancer. Damn, that's fucked up. He's just kind of getting in the spotlight again with some of this stuff. Ted Nugent says he won't play concerts where venues enforce C-19 vaccine mask mandates. Well, okay. And, it's your choice, Artists should have their choice to how to handle. I probably will read another headline about this coming up on this page. I think it's on the front page. I'm just doing the front page at Blabbermouth for this podcast. So, you should have the choice to do that. If you think that's your stand, you should be able to do it. If you the opposite, then that's your business. If you want only people with the jab to attend your concerts, that's your business. I don't get into that subject. I know it's the current subject right now, but I don't get into it on this podcast way too, because I've been actually into it a lot as far as otherwise. So I'm not going to do that unless I get in a conversation with someone in an interview. But he should have. I think that's his choice that he wants to do that. So Queensryche's Michael Wilton fires back on YouTuber guitar players who think so highly of themselves. And well, I have no idea what he's talking about, dude. I don't know. I'm definitely not one of those guitar players. I don't post my music. I just post songs that I record on YouTube, but I don't do like guitar playing on it. I might do that a little more. Steve Vai and possibility of reunion of David Lee Roth, Eat 'em and Smile solo band. The train has left the station. Okay, well, that sucks. That would have been kind of cool to see that. RIAA moves against hit piece, calls for permanent end to bogus NFT sites, infringement of artist rights. I think the RIAA is a corrupt institution that needs to be razed to the ground. I don't know. I mean, they've done some, I don't know. Anyways, that's enough. I'm getting into some very nihilistic politics there. Sound very punk, don't I? Watch pro shot video of Glenn Tipton performing Metal Guides with Judas Priest at 2021 Bloodstock Open Air. That's cool. Metallica releases video of King Nothing. Don't care. I don't like Load. It's ridiculous. Kill the Lights featuring full of Blow It for My Valentine. Don't care. Sorry. Slash. Don't care. Corey Taylor. Whatever. Vinnie Paul's House. Whatever. Rob Halford, KK Downing, doesn't think it's going to be awkward at all if he comes up with them. Well, they should reunite with them. Bring back KK. I think that's the best strategy. I mean, I don't know what the differences are between those two. I haven't read the whole book that he wrote, KK Downing. I do own it, but I think it's stupid. These little disputes and stuff are dumb. I just think they're awful. So. I hope people could still hear me. Am I? Oh my God. Okay. I probably should change this. Okay. Probably turn up the volume a little bit. I'll compress the hell out of this so and normalize my audio. So don't worry. Kind of getting back into podcasting after a long absence this year. So with various podcasts that I've done. So let's see. I'm going to turn it up a little bit. I don't care. Hello. There we go. That's a little better. So, I'm going to get to the rest of the headlines here. David Ellefson, Chris Poland, Chris Adler featuring a second sizzle reel for Nick Menza documentary. That's cool. Warrior Soul releases title track of Out on Bail album. I don't know. Whatever. Black Swan featuring Jeff Pilson. It sounds like a Frontiers band, probably. These Frontiers bands that get formed. I know one of the new albums that is coming out is on Frontiers that I really want to get is New Horizon. But, yeah, just another super group they're doing. It's just going to be, I'm sure it'll be, let's see. I predict it's Frontiers. It doesn't say it on the front. Let's look in the headline. Black Swan featuring Jeff Pilson, Robert McCauley, Red Beach, and Matt Starr. That's what I was going to say. Let's see, when is it going to come out? Is it? Is that Frontiers? Yes, it is, I believe. It's another band like that. That's hilarious. They form all these super groups, so like they pay people to do these projects and stuff. And some of them are pretty good, some of them aren't. Let's see what else. NHC featured Taylor Hawkins, Dave Lavera, and Chris Chaney. Don't care, sorry. Hailstorm released back from the... And if I start interviewing people, I will care a little more because I'll have to listen to all this stuff. I'm very one-track minded when I get into stuff sometimes. So, Hailstorm to release Back from the Dead album, whatever. Not Ailstorm. I want to hear more Ailstorm, the pirate metal band. Watain announces the Agony and Ecstasy of Watain album. It might be pretty cool. Arch Enemy releases a new single, Handshake with Hell. It's okay. I'm sure it's okay. Creator announces Hate Uber Alice album. I watched that. It was pretty good. It sounded a little like some of the other title tracks or not title tracks, I guess. Or I guess it is a title track for some of the recent albums in the last 15 years. It was okay. They were great live, though. Late Metallica bassist Cliff Burton reaction figure from Super 7 coming next week. Don't care. Red Hot Chili Peppers, whatever, don't care. Bruce Dickinson, half of us get cancer, is not a death sentence anymore. That's a positive thing to say. That's good. Oh, okay. Well, now let's do some more controversial stuff. Rob Halford admits that it was his idea for Judas Priest to tour as quartet. That blew up in my face, didn't it? Well, that was one of the dumbest ideas ever. Judas Priest is a 5-piece band, period. It is one of the first bands like that to reach prominence, other than like Wishbone Ash or Allman Brothers and stuff like that, or Scorpions, around the same time. And that's what it is. I mean, that's Judas Priest. That's the sound. If you watch like the British Steel documentary from classic rock, they talk about like these chord inversions they did on some of their material. Like, you need 2 guitarists to do that. It's not like Queensryche chord inversions, but like some of the ways that they played, it made one grand sound with 2 guitarists. Red Hot Chili Peppers, don't care. Eddie Van Halen book, don't care. I like Eddie Van Halen, but I don't care about reading a book. 5-Finger Death Punch, 5-Finger Donkey Punch, I don't know, whatever. Metallica's preparing deluxe versions of Load and Reload. I do not care at all about that. Now, I'm going to be a little, on the record, of being a little controversial and say the Saint Anger one, if they include their Presudio sessions, which included that weird song in Some Kind of Monster that was like this ambient song that Lars's dad got pissed about, I will check that out for sure. Morgan Lander on Kitty's for Japan plans. Okay, I don't know. Whatever. Eddie Van Halen's ex-wife, Valerie Bertinelli. I loved him from the deepest part of my soul. Well, that's actually cool, because a lot of people that get married and stuff, and celebrities, they don't have that kind of connection afterwards. That's pretty cool to see. Devil Wears Prada, I don't care. I'm not into metalcore. Machine Head, don't care. Creator, do care. More new metal and metalcore bands to play festival. Slipknot, don't care. All That Remains, don't care. Saxon, sort of care. Abath, do care. Pretty cool. Foo Fighters, I don't even want to start on that. Paul Baloff gets his own action figure. Now that's kind of cool, because that's a little out of the norm. The Exodus singer, that's kind of cool. I like that. That's fucking neat. That's actually pretty neat. I'm not the biggest Exodus fan, but I think it's cool that he's getting a action figure. Rest in peace. Stone Sour, don't care. Judas Priest, yeah, whatever. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame crap. I'm just skipping the next few headlines. Typo Negative, Bruce Dickinson, Billy Idol, Life of Agony, virus stuff, yeah. Wolfgang Van Halen. David Crosby, Steven Stills, and Graham Nash demand removal of their current recordings from Spotify. Yeah, well, so it's kind of funny because Neil Young's said bad things in the past that were kind of misinformation. And where does he tell people to go to? Amazon, very corrupt company. And he tells people to go to Apple and Amazon to get his music. And his music catalog is half owned by this company called Blackstone, which is, a lot of actually Democratic politicians have called out for being very bad. So it's kind of funny. You have these boomers who sold out a long time ago attacking Joe Rogan, who does say some stupid shit, I will admit. But it's like pot, meat, kettle. That's all I got to say about that. Nile guitarist. Okay, well, I like Nile. Okay, here we go. Tesla's Frank Hannon pulls out of Monsters of Rock because of C-Virus, which I call it on the podcast just for censorship reasons. Ongoing and changing virus issues. And goes on to say, he was like the opposite. He was kind of into conspiracy stuff early on, and then he kind of changed his mind. I respect it just as much as I do Ted Nugent. If you have to do what you have to do, because, if you believe, it's your choice if you want to do that. Now, it comes to a point where Are you being too careful? Are you just doing things because you're paranoid, or I don't know. But I really like Tesla. Great underrated guitarist too. Great guitar work. Great genius musician, by the way. Triumph documentary rock and roll machine. I don't even know that much Triumph. I know. I like a lot of Canadian bands though. Cheap Trick. I don't really care that much, even though it's kind of. I have some funny stories. Something with regards to that I'm not going to say on this episode. Jonathan Davis says Korn failed miserably. Well, I would say that I don't like Korn, so they failed with me from the beginning. Wasp and Armored Saint had 7 shows. I might be saying that. I want to see Wasp since they don't play America much. Hannibal Corpse and Candlemass. Damn, that sounds really awesome actually. To play Decibel Magazine Fest. King Diamond working on lyrics. Yeah, long-awaited Institute album. Yes, I'm looking forward to that. Absolutely, I will be a first-day buyer. I've been waiting for King Diamond. I didn't like Give Me Your Soul, Please that much. I liked 9, the Last Merciful Fate, and I really did like the Puppet Master. But yeah, that was an album that was a little bit not up to par, in my opinion. Still a King Diamond album. It's better than 90% of the bands that are out there anyways. Ronnie Wood unveils Picasso-inspired painting of the Rolling Stones. I don't care. YNT, I haven't heard much of them. I should probably listen to them. Korn single, Lars Ulrich, death of John Zazula. That's sad. He's very important person. Alice Cooper on politics and music don't go together. I think that's bullshit. You don't have to like the politics, of a band. You don't have to like Agnostic Front, their right-wing politics, and you don't have to like Napalm does left-wing politics, but both are great bands. You can listen to it and appreciate it where you agree and not appreciate it where you don't, but bands should be able to sing with whatever the hell they want. And this is coming from a guy that early on had some very satirical political songs with his original group. What was it called? Generation Landmine, not Billion Dollar Babies, Elected, songs like that kind of have a political bent to them. Topical bent, at least. Evanescence, they're okay, more on that. Okay. I think I'm done with this page. I would go on and on. Oh, Gene Simmons says he will accept cryptocurrency. Oh, he's trying to make money off of that. I have about $500 in various cryptos right now. It's going up, my portfolio. I'm just skipping around a little bit now. Ted Nugent blasts Neil Young. He's out of his mind. Well, I think you're both out of your mind in some ways. Both have had great music, though. Neil Young's early work is pretty good, and he had a lot of weird kind of albums in the early '80s. And Ted Nugent, the band Amboy Dukes are very underrated. I want to actually delve more into them. They had a lot of weird, like proto-prog kind of stuff early on and stuff. Skid Row, don't care. Nirvana fires back at Nevermind lawsuit. No, that's hilarious. Dave Ellefson shares life advice: masturbate, masturbate, masturbate. No, I'm just kidding. we're meant to learn not from our past. We're not meant to be stuck in it with my sticky fingers. I added that part. Dave Ellefson, I will defend though, because some of that was bullshit. Saxons, Bill Byford on why Judas Priest crazy announcement, which was correct. Quartet, maybe they've been drinking. Yeah, I think so. That's insane. A 2-guitar band. Oh, we'll just tour as a quartet next tour. Why? That's worse than like Nigel's Nigel Tufnell making fun of, I'm self-deprecating about metal, okay? It's worse than like him on some glue or something, and drunk and on 4 hours of sleep, like the idea that he would have. Having Judas Priest play as a 4-piece, dumbest fucking idea ever. And gladly ratioed and taken down as an idea. Sabotage, Alice Cooper, Aerosmith, Korn, George Lynch. Yeah, George Lynch should have been in Judas Priest because he was volunteering, purportedly, I'm just a rumor, he was purportedly volunteering to replace Andy Sneap on this current tour. And I thought that would have been cool. Tickets would have gone through the roof for that shit. People would have really gone in droves, in my opinion, and be like, whoa, George Lynch and Judas Priest? You know, they would have sold a fuck ton of tickets. Cult announces tour. That's cool. I like the Cult. Voivod, great band. Okay, I'm going to go back to this other headline because I wanted to talk about this some more. There's more stuff. Wow, there's a lot of stuff. Okay. Poison's Ricky Rocket and sides with Neil Young. Well, fuck off. Whatever. Okay. Maybe Alice Cooper's right. After all. In a way he is. In a way he is, even though there's plenty of stuff that's political. Rock is a political act against the establishment of the 50s and, you know, in some ways like racism and stuff too. So, at least originally. But I won't go on all that. So, let's go back to this Motley Crue headline, which I really love to talk about because I think it's hilarious. And I'm going to spend a little time on this podcast talking about it. So apparently, Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam. I'm going to read the quote. It was a New York Times establishment, you know, the most establishment paper there is. He was discussed a variety of topics, including what ripples of change he believes Generation X alternative rock culture of the early 90s may have been responsible for. You know, I used to work in San Diego loading gear at a club. I'd end up being at shows I wouldn't have chosen to go. Bands that monopolized late 80s MTV. The metal bands, I'm trying to be nice, I despised. I despised Girls, and Motley Crue. Fuck you, I hated it. I hated how it made the fellas look. I hated how it made the women look. It was so vacuous, felt so vacuous. This is interesting. Pearl Jam singer continued. Guns N' Roses came out, and thank God at least it had some teeth. I'm circling back to the one thing I appreciated that was in Seattle in the alternative crowd, the girls could wear their leather boots, their combat boots and sweaters, and their hair looked like Cat Powers and not Heather Locklear's. Nothing against her. Well, I'll concur. I hate the 80s hair. Everything else is great, but I hate the hair on women in the 80s. I just don't like it. I just never did. They weren't selling themselves short. They had an opinion and be respected. I think there's a change that lasted. It sounds so trite, but before then it was bustiers. The only person who wore a bustier in the 90s who I could appreciate was Perry Farrell. Okay, so it's a little more nuanced than I initially thought. Made me laugh. Okay, so Nikki Sixx went on Twitter. Made me laugh today reading how much the singer in Pearl Jam hated Motley Crue. Now, considering they're one of the most boring bands in history, it's kind of a compliment, isn't it? And then, let's see what he said. Okay, so I'm going to address this just by saying right now that I like all sorts of stuff. I like the first Pearl Jam. I don't like anything after that, really. I like the first two Motley Crue. I don't really like their albums after that. I thought they were horribly uneven. I do like various songs from various albums. I haven't really heard enough Pearl Jam after 10 to know. I've just heard songs on the radio and, you know, scattered tracks after that. I'm like, yeah, I'm not really into that. So that's what I'm going to say about that. I like Motley Crue more than Pearl Jam, but I do like the first Pearl Jam. But this whole like 90s, like we're holier than thou because we're not like, don't have girls in our videos and we shoot heroin, so that's immediately better than all the cocaine these guys are doing. You know, they did heroin too, but you know, we're so like pissed off at the system or slacker Generation X, so we're so much better than these hair metal bands and these metal bands, these wanker. You know, they used to call this stuff wanky, like guitar solos and stuff, or anything that had any complexity to it. You know, I remember this infamous Blind Melon Guitar World article where they watched Dream Theater and they bashed it and stuff, and it was just as vacuous, but in a different way. It's this smug, arrogant, like 90s, I almost call it like metal phobic thing, and it's dumb. You know, it's dumb because there's bad things and good things about both sides of the story. You know, maybe Pearl Jam played more like pro-choice charities in Motley Crue, but Motley Crue probably were responsible for more abortions than Pearl Jam were in their whole existence. It's a joke. It's a joke, people. So I think this whole thing's just gotten so stupid over the years. And I grew up with it because I grew up in a region where metal was not cool. I was into metal, and then the 90s, it hit even harder. It got really weird, You were associated with like a Camaro, quote unquote white trash person if you had an Iron Maiden shirt on. Now it's like the nerdier kids that like metal more often than not. It's kind of funny what happened, but like, it just was so stupid, and it just it reminds me of that period of time, because it's like, yes, it got overblown and it became too much, the hair metal thing, and metal suffered, as a casualty of that too, as regular metal suffered. So it was pretty sad. It was a pretty sad period for music. I hear that in some of that 90s like alternative pop stuff, and I just want to puke, because the scales and the attitude it doesn't jibe with me, And I liked a lot of grunge bands and stuff and alternative bands. I'd rather listen to Husker Du's Zen Arcade than any like Toad the Wet Sprocket fucking hit from 1992 or something, the stuff that was done in those genres, the alternative genre, were done better in the 80s anyways. That's what I'm saying. Ironically enough, like a Pixies song or a Husker Du or whoever, Replacements even, or something like that. But you listen to these bands and you hear them on the radio, and they're just they're just awful. It's hard to take. It's hard to take some of that music. It's just like this poppy version of alternative. I'd rather listen to Danger Danger, Let's Get Naughty Naughty 10 times on loop than listen to 1 minute of some of that shit, honestly. That's just my opinion. I have an opinion. So, but, and Pearl Jam were indirectly responsible for some of that garbage too. So I'm just not a fan of it. It's just not for me. It's not garbage, but it just sucked. And, as far as Motley Crue goes, I like the first Motley Crue and the second Motley Crue, and I think after that, it was horribly uneven. I don't know if you blame heroin or money or just being full of shit or whatever, or full of yourself. But Pearl Jam, I don't know much about the later stuff, anything after 10 or maybe what was the second one called, Versus. I'm not really a big fan of, that stuff. I mean, I think the 90s were just as bad as the 80s. People remembered the 80s being in many ways. And we're learning that now, because what is lasting now? The irony is in the 80s. People are still talking about the 80s. Synthwave, this new hard rock revival in Sweden. People are still talking about the 80s. There's like a very small number of bands that are reviving grunge. I think there's this YouTuber called Circle of Tone who did a video about it, but it's like, there's a few good bands in that, by the way, too. But it's like, just the 80s had this cooler, almost like retro futuristic kind of thing to it. Listen to synth pop or hair metal or AOR or metal or proto prog metal or whatever, black metal. It just was a better decade overall for mainstream music. So it's dumb. It's dumb. These guys trying to, I'm not going to use the word virtue signal, but they're trying to grandstand about how great they were because they gave women more rights in the music or whatever. I'm sure they were banning groupies just as much a lot of the time, I mean, not all. I mean, obviously they were too strung out on heroin to get it up a lot of the time. That's probably what happened with a lot of these douchebags. So that's what I got to say about that. So I just rattled on about 30 minutes about the beef between Nikki Sixx and Eddie Vedder, like both fucking has-beens in some ways. I mean, I know Motley Crue will sell out stadiums, but really, what are you watching? If you see Motley Crue, and I know that's controversial, but I mean, I'd rather see a newer band from Sweden like Crazy Licks. Been really into the band Heat. You know, they might play a club in America or a cruise or whatever, but I'd rather see that shit. You know, it's better. Or Steel Panther even. Ooh, I'm getting into that drama now. That beef from a couple years ago. Those guys are the same age as Motley Crue pretty much. I mean, they're maybe a little younger. But they put on a hell of a show, Steel Panther. So, not as into their albums as some of these Swedish bands coming out, but yeah, I think, you know, I recommend seeing Steel Panther live. It's fun as hell. And the singer can still sing all the lyrics, so like Motley Crue. But I'm going to get to the subject of today's episode, sort of. Well, I guess it's two subjects now because I talked for so long about that one. And it's about the ghost players, ghost musicians subject, and just some of my thoughts on this. And over the years, I've read a lot of stuff about this, and it's really convoluted story to tell about a lot of these classic albums that came out that, sadly, they're not all they seem to be. And the earliest example that I can think of, well, in metal, hard rock territory is Kiss, of course, because the album Unmasked and Dynasty were not played by the musicians that were on the cover of the album. All except for Dirty Living. I think that was the only song that Peter Criss was on drums, and it was Anton Fig on the rest of it. They were kind of one of the bands that kind of broke new ground as far as that goes. But I'll talk about some of the rumored ghost musicians and stuff as well, and just my thoughts on it. So it seems like a very British phenomenon because Black Sabbath had it happen several times. I forgot which album it was, but there was a bass player, or maybe it was Bob Daisley, or that was on, or one of them, and they had, or Dave Spitz was on of it. And they just, what happens with these bands is they have pictures of the guys on the cover, but the guy does none of the actual playing on the album. It's so infuriating and just so like, it's sleazy, and a lot of bands I love have done this, unfortunately. Ozzy Osbourne obviously did it because on what is it? Speak of the Devil, or not Speak of the Devil, Diary of a Madman. He had Rudy Sarzo and what the hell? Who was the drummer? Tommy Aldridge in the pictures, and it was really Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley played on there. So it's been happening for a long time, and it's just really annoying. But the worst example, in my opinion, was Bon Jovi, because Bon Jovi had a guy, I think it was Hugh McDonald, is that the bass player, who was a little bit older than the band, but every album after the third one, I think, was this guy, and they had, God, what is his name? Alex St. John or whatever, as such. I forgot his name. I'd have to look it up. But it's like they had this bass player essentially ghost, play all the albums and all the bass lines. And they had this guy, well, he's more attractive than that guy. He's 5 years younger too, so we got to have him on the pictures and in all the videos. And like, Born to Be My Baby is the wrong guy that's playing bass. I'm like, what the fuck is this shit? It's the most poserish thing you can do, in my opinion. It's so dumb. Black Sabbath did it. Ozzy Osbourne did it. I'm trying to remember which Black Sabbath album had that happen. So the most controversial accusations I've heard about this were towards Whitesnake. And I'll tell you why. So recently, I think it was Mike Stone, or one of the producers of the 1987 album, that came out and said that much of the guitars on the 1987 album are the Dan Huff, the guitarist of the band Giant, which I actually like because they're influencing a lot of the newer AOR bands I like, but I don't like them as much as John Sykes, who I really believe played on the album 100%. So the reason why I don't believe that is there's no evidence from a lot of the players involved, and other than this producer, that said that John Sykes didn't play on all the album. I guess what happened was John Sykes was using this thing called an Eventide harmonizer on a lot of the guitar riffs and stuff, recording. I'm quite familiar with that, but I'm just like, I know some people aren't musicians, so they don't know what this is, but a lot of the guitars sounded more out of tune, the rhythm guitars. So apparently Dan Huff came in and recorded some of the tracks over. I don't believe it for 1 second, because if you listen to Blue Murder, which was John Sykes' album immediately after leaving Whitesnake, if you listen to a lot of his inflections and the subtleties of his playing on everything he's done, including Thin Lizzy or Tigers of Pantane, it doesn't sound like Dan Huff. I mean, if to play like another guitarist, it would take probably months to even kind of attempt to fake that, and just it doesn't seem believable. Plus the demos are out too from 1987. They're very similar, and we know that their 100% credit is given to John Sykes on those. So I don't believe it. I think this producer is confusing when John Sykes left, they had Dan Huff do some like radio versions of Standing in the Shadows, which is from Slide It In, and Here I Go Again. And it sounds very different. Those versions sound completely different in many ways than the original versions, including the one on 1987. And the solo is different, everything else like that. So it doesn't make any sense. And also, it was a lot harder to get away with that back then, as far as like ghost playing with regards to guitar, at least. Like you could do bass or drums, obviously, which Kiss or Black Sabbath or Ozzy, people, it was this guy that played on there, not him. It's like it was one of those things, but it was a lot harder on guitar back then to do that. Obviously, Milli Vanilli did it too later on, but with vocals. But you had John Sykes play on Slide It In, and you also had him on Thin Lizzy's Thunder and Lightning, and some other releases and stuff. And there's a very definitive way of playing. Even like on Here I Go Again, which we know that was Adrian Vandenberg that played the solo, because Sykes had left before he could do the solo on that particular song. It sounds completely different with tone, just the way that he plays, the feel, everything's different. So I do not believe for 1 second that Dan Huff played a lot of the rhythm guitars on 1987. I just don't believe it. I don't buy it. Maybe I'm a fanboy, because John Sykes is one of my favorite guitarists. I even bought like a Les Paul style guitar and bought a Dirty Fingers pickup just because of John Sykes. Period. So I don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. But it's, Psycho Circus is one of the most infamous examples of that, which happened later with Kiss. That Ace Frehley only played on 2 tracks and sang backing vocals on one and another, and then Peter Criss only played on one song. It's just like, it's just a poserish thing to do. I really hate it. I think it's dumb, and I think it's just, I know it's money related. Music industry isn't like it was, so I don't think it's going to happen as much now. But it still happens from time to time. But it's really annoying. And plus, now you have. So I think sometimes what happened was these guys were just so wasted on drugs or whatever. I think that happened. I think that was the Bon Jovi story, as far as I heard, at least initially, that you had someone else do the bass or whatever. Like, oh, it's too high. I'm gonna do the bass myself, or bass themselves sometimes. You had Erie Von Danzig. I don't believe that he didn't play. I think John Christ said he played some of the bass, or someone said that John Christ played some of the bass on the first 4 Danzig. I don't know if I buy that, but it's not like the bass was that virtuous anyways. You can hear it, and it's good, but it's, as far as the way Erie Von tells the story of the original Danzig lineup. Speaking of that, I know I talked about it last episode. I don't believe that was the case. So I don't believe that one either. That one is a little more convincing, but not as, it's still not convincing. So this happens a lot, and I think it happened more in the 80s and 70s, because it was harder to record stuff. So a person could be, in some funk or bad mood, and they had to get a record out. So they have some guy play bass on one song or all the songs or whatever, and live they wouldn't do it that way, just like the tour for Dynasty, Peter Criss is playing the drums. He just didn't play it on the album. But it's just really annoying and sleazy to come out and say that they played on the album. And actually, no, I correct myself. The worst example of that is on Creatures of the Night by Kiss, which is, to me, their last classic, like, sort of their last classic album in a way. Because allegedly, well, I'm going to get to that in a second, but, you know, apparently, you know, it was Vinnie Vincent and some other guitarists, and Ace showed up for like a photo session and like a miming session on a TV show, but it's like he's not on the album. Though there are rumors, just like with the John Sykes thing, which is another producer that came out and said, I think he's on there somewhere, you know, like he is. I'm like, I don't know where, but like apparently, I think people confuse their time frames for recording too, by the way, because I know, what's his name? Michael James Jackson, not Michael Jackson, the singer, but the producer came out and said Ace is might be on Creatures of the Night on a track or two, like. So yeah, I don't know what to believe with that, because I don't think he was. I think maybe he's on rhythm guitar on a track or two, like if he had like 50 tracks of rhythm guitar on one of the songs, maybe he's in there somewhere. He's definitely not on leads, because he has a very distinct style, just like John Sykes. But yeah, it's just it's one of those things that's kind of annoying being a music fan when you know this poserish thing happened with your favorite band. Now, thankfully, thankfully, Iron Maiden never did that. I think Judas Priest actually, I believe I read somewhere that not Tom Alam, what's a drummer called? Dave, what is his name? The drummer of Judas Priest in the 80s. Dave Holland, I'm sorry. I was just like trying to think. My brain is like highly caffeinated right now, so I'm just like, I'm going all over the place. So I believe Dave Holland, there was some ghost, I don't know if it's Jeff Martin from Racer X or who said this. They were doing ghost drums behind the kit backstage or something. They were miking that during some of the tours or something. I'm just like, holy shit, that is really insane. Like, I correct myself. That's one of the weirdest examples of this whole thing, because it's like Dave Holland was a pretty good drummer. I liked his work on Screaming for Vengeance particularly, because speaking of Creatures of the Night and Screaming for Vengeance, both 1982 albums, I believe, they both kind of have this like post-Bonham like drum production that really works, but in this like 80s like gated reverb added in way. When they had the 80s sound right with the drums, you know, in the early 80s, like that was the 80s sound that sounded good. When it became really tinny and really synthetic later, though, and that's a story for another time. But yeah, I love the drum production on Screaming for Vengeance. I think the drums on it are great too. I don't think he's the best. Dave Holland's the best drummer, but in Trapeze it sounded good too. So I mean, I think Les Binks is the best drummer of Judas Priest. Was the best drummer of Judas Priest, period. But yeah, it's the weirdest story I've heard about ghost musicians. But yeah, ghost musicians, I just think it's a ploy to get an album done for a record company, or you know, keep an image of a band, which is really lame. You know, just keep an image. That's why a lot of those grunge bands formed, of course, because you know, it's kind of like a reaction to some of that bullshit, you know, that people are doing, and they deservedly so. And same with thrash, you know, it's like some of that stuff came to be because it was a reaction to that stuff, and that's fine. But you know, in conclusion, there's good and bad in every period. There's good and bad in every genre. And a lot of people don't believe that. That's my belief. I believe that with every subgenre of metal or rock. I like everything except for that really bad pop like alternative from the mid '90s. I think I kind of respect Hootie and the Blowfish, believe it or not, but I won't go into that. It's not what this podcast is about. But just because they're so ordinary that they just don't give a fuck. It's kind of cool, you know. It's kind of funny. I was watching a documentary about their second album for some reason the other night, so I thought I'd mention that because it was a bomb, I guess. So yeah, that's about all. I think next episode I'm going to try to get some kind of interview with musician, because that's what this is going to be all about a lot of the time. But I like to give my opinions too. But that's about all.